My name is Sonali McDermid, and I'm an assistant professor of environmental studies at New York University. And I'm a climate modeler by training, and I look at the impact and evaluate the impact of climate change on agriculture, but also of agriculture and land use on our environmental systems. And so I've been at NYU for 1 year now and hope to continue. The first issue is the whole eating meat issue, right? At this point, it's estimated that the livestock sector, so this is not just production, but storage, transport, everything, is somewhere between 11 and 14% of global emissions in carbon dioxide equivalents, and that's mostly methane, right? But nitrous oxides and other things as well. And so eating meat in the proportion that we do, if everybody ate meat the way that we do in this country or in parts of South America, let's say, we're facing a big problem. And at least within the technologies that we have now, I mean, it could mean that we need more area than we actually have. Now, of course, that's, to grow the feed and everything that it takes to now that's in dispute because, we could manage our systems a little bit better. We could improve the varieties of crops that go into feeding livestock, and we might make some of that back without having to necessarily degrade our systems. But those things have yet to be proved substantially and generally. So I think that the trends that we're seeing right now, and that's India and China consuming more meat, right, and sort of the developing world consuming more meat, is worrisome in the sense that it potentially could contribute to more emissions, although there's experimentation now with managing livestock systems to actually kind of better manage fluxes of carbon dioxide and nitrous and all these things, so that's in question still. But I think that shifting from a heavy meat-based diet to a more vegetable-based diet is kind of a no-brainer to solving some of the issues related to agriculture and climate change. Again, what it takes, the data is all there. It's not an issue of the data. It's an issue of the irrational, right? It's an issue of societal will, political will, right, in order to be able to do that. And it's an issue of convincing people that, wealth does not necessarily have to equate to a high meat diet. There's other means to get those proteins and the things that you need into your bodies, right, and to fulfill your nutritional requirements. So that's one thing. No, it's not sustainable. And yes, it would help if we switched to a more vegetable-based diet. The reality is I'm not sure how feasible that's going to be if there's a lack of will to do that. But right now the system is quite inefficient to have to crop all of this land to feed something else and lose 90% of the calories in the process as you move up the chain, right, and keep moving up the chain. It would be much better if we devoted those fields that we're growing feed on to feed humans, right, or to feed, that would be the best use of the land. That may not be the case. That might not be our reality. Now, as for food technology and meats grown in the lab, I think this is really interesting, and I think with the rise of veganism, right, and sort of more vegetarians that are moving in that direction, this poses a really interesting solution. And I think that there are those that would argue that we're not far away from being able to produce, I won't call it meat, but proteins, right? Lab-based proteins in a way that can feed everybody. And some people are convinced that that's the future. And I think that's really interesting and compelling. I don't see that. One of the things we have to deal with here is sort of the livestock lobby and the livestock industry, right? I don't see that as being competitive, at least in the short term, right? And in terms of fulfilling the demand that we need elsewhere. I don't know what the social acceptance of that would be completely just yet, although it's being more adopted in the vegan communities. And it's a really interesting juncture because on the one hand, we're ready to sort of criticize and look down and kind of furrow our brows at GMOs, right? And I'm not taking an opinion here. I'm just saying this is an interesting dynamic, which is effectively a food technology, right? But on the other hand, we're really willing to accept lab-based meats, right? And kind of grown lab-based, and of course it's really this idea of modification of an organism that is what breeds fear. But if we say that it's not conclusive, which it's not, that genetically modified organisms can impact the environment, we just don't have enough data to say either way truly on that and generalize that. The fact that we would deny one technology while accepting another one is just sort of an interesting dynamic to me that should be looked at. I think that there's scope for it. I think it's really interesting. I don't have a problem myself eating lab-based proteins if that's something that's nutritious and good and not as impactful on the environment. I guess I just, in the status quo, I don't quite see how that fits into the trajectories that we're taking with land-based agriculture at this point. And that might develop quite independently of land-based agriculture until it hits the point where it becomes competitive, is what I'll say about that.